Good evening, everyone, and a special welcome to those that are joining us in person and those that are joining with us virtually. Council staff, welcome to our planning meeting this evening. I remind you to ensure that your communication devices are shut off or put on vibrate, please. This evening, we will be hosting a public planning meeting at 6 o'clock. So council, I'll try to have a little personal break in there before we continue with that scheduling. I remind you that this meeting will be streamed live and recorded for public viewing on the town's YouTube page. We acknowledge that this land on which we are gathered today is part of the ancestral land of the Chippewa, Ottawa, and Potawatomi peoples, referred to collectively as the Anishinaabe. It is through the connection of the Anishinaabe with the spirit of the land, the water, and air that we recognize their unique cultures, traditions, and values. Together as treaty people, we have a shared responsibility to act with respect for the environment that sustains all of life, affecting the future for those generations to come. Council, I would remind you, if you have a pecuniary interest, to declare it at the appropriate time. Item 4 on our agenda, delegations. Clerk, do we have any delegations this evening?
No delegations this evening.
All right, thank you. So I'm going to take us to item number 5 on the agenda. Business arising from the previous meetings. 5.1, I have a motion by Councillor Van Claveren, seconded by Deputy Mayor McEwen, that the report by Ella Flynn, Executive Assistant, Deputy Clerk, and Adam Sabansky, Chief Administrative Officer, dated March the 6th, 2024, regarding the short-term rental licensing versus registration, receive for information. So council, the motion that is on the table tonight is in regard to registration as against versus the licensing program. Staff incorporated council's feedback from the last meeting. And as the motion passed at the last meeting, staff is looking to confirm that a public meeting be held on April the 29th. Looking at this, if further discussion is warranted or desired, then we have to make a motion for reconsideration. So Ms. Flynn, are you taking lead on this, or is Mr. Sabansky, are you doing it together?
So again, as per the mayor's comments, the motion is before you. After reviewing the suggested registration bylaw, we determined that the registration bylaw wouldn't actually save us any time in being able to bring the bylaw into full force. The process would be the same with a licensing bylaw versus registration, whereas a licensing bylaw would be enforced through the courts until such time the set fees are in place. A registration bylaw would only be enforced through the courts. So the registration bylaw would not provide us any additional enforcement while we're waiting for the set fines to become in place, as the mechanisms for enforcement during that period would be the same no matter which bylaw you went with. So again, being that the main purpose of the registration bylaw was to allow for better enforceability between the times until the fees have been approved by the Attorney General, we felt that there is no benefit to scrap the short-term licensing bylaw, which council requested a year ago, and we worked on for the last year. And that's why at this time it is suggested to move forward to public consultation for the OPA ZBA as suggested at the previous meeting and endorsed.
Mr. Sabansky, any questions on comments on that? I'll go to my right, Mr. Councillor Bojan.
Thank you. I don't necessarily have any questions about the report itself. I think it had all the details we were looking for. I guess the only question I would have is if we stick with, I know they attached the licensing bylaw again here. So just for clarification, if we went with the licensing bylaw, was there something in there about suspension and revocation and what that's tied to? Because I know in there, I think it mentions the discretion of the director. But I know a lot of municipalities have demerit points so that it's a more unbiased or less arbitrary way to suspend or revoke. I'm just wondering if did we do something about how the demerit points, or sorry, how the license could get suspended or revoked?
Ms. Flynn?
So there is a full section on what we could revoke or suspend a license for. It would either be at the time of application, they didn't submit everything, then we denied a license, or if during operations they were non-compliant and they weren't following with an order. There was no demerit point system because we were keep it simple. I see where you're coming from, that it at least gives you a bit of a scale to then make that determination of when to revoke or suspend. So we can look into that if that's something that council would want to see in the bylaw. But just for simplicity, it wasn't included at this time.
Counselor Basie,
Nothing at this time, thank you.
Counselor Rodriguez,
Thank you. You just left my, can you come back to me?
sure. Deputy Mayor,
I do have a question about the fines. Like for example, number one is operating a short-term rental without a license, it's $1,000. Number two is operating a short-term rental under a name not endorsed in the license. It's only $350. Well, so why isn't it $1,000 also? I don't quite understand this, because like for $350, somebody's renting a place out overnight for, say, $900,000. The fine is immaterial to them. So where did these fine numbers come from?
Chair, so the Attorney General only allows set fines up to $1,000. So the fee for operating without a license was set high, as basically an encouragement for people to go out and get that license. Operating a short-term rental under a name not endorsed on the license would be if I sold the house to Lisa and then Lisa just carried it on as a short-term rental. It was still licensed, but she wasn't the actual person whose name we had on file and whose contact information we had on file. So it's just to encourage people to transfer that license if ownership has changed.
Yeah, I just thought it'd be more encouragement if there'd be $1,000.
If you want us to increase it, we can definitely do that.
That's my concern.
Counselor Van Claveren,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think my only comment is, I'm still am looking to choose registration over licensing up until the time where complaints or problems require a higher level of enforcement. Yeah, it's a little less imposing to those folks that are operating little enterprises and businesses out there, and that's probably my only comment. Is a great report, but I'd still like to keep it as simple as possible if we could.
okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Counselor Wilbeth,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Once again, I think this is extreme overreach, what we're trying to do here. We did not, when the original complaints were coming in here over the last couple of years, we talked about elimination of short-term rentals in residential areas, which, by the way, we did not achieve that goal. We talked about commercial short-term rentals in residential areas. We did not achieve that goal. And we had legal tell us that we had no authority to stop commercial. So when it goes back to some of the original complaints, we have not resolved any of those complaints. And I think when I look at this, you know, I just see it, we've gone so far. You'd think we were a tourist community that have thousands of short-term rentals. We're not. We're a community that has very few short-term rentals. And we are imposing more rules on these poor short-term rental people than anybody else in this municipality. You can rent your room out for 31 days and none of these rules apply to you whatsoever. I've said this before and I need to say it again. And when I made the motion at the last meeting, and correct me if I'm wrong, I thought, made the motion that we would move forward with registration. Period. I didn't request that we go and look at licensing versus registration. I have no knowledge of that whatsoever. Now, if I'm wrong, you can tell me so. So tonight, what I'd like to see I'd like to see after the final discussion, I'd like to see us move forward with registration. I have no issue with that. I think it's good to know who owns these, who we get a hold of and stuff like that. And I'd like to see the bylaw put on the shelf. Let's take a look at the next year. Let's see how many complaints come in, because we certainly don't have many, if any. So I just think this is just overkill. And if you're gonna do this to a handful of people, I don't know what you're gonna do with the other people that rent out properties, but this is just not the way to go about business here in this municipality. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Counselor. Okay, back to Counselor Rodriguez. Did you recall your question?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Questions?
Question.
Questions?
Question?
When it came to, thank you, Your Worship. When it came to I think this prompts a septic assessment, is that correct? Did I read that?
A septic assessment?
Yes, I thought I saw Corinne.
I'm right
Where
there.
are you looking?
Corinne, I guess I would ask this
Okay.
too.
Licensing.
Yeah. Did I read that correctly about a septic assessment? This prompts,
Could. Depending on which unit, if it's a separate unit that's being used as a rental, septic assessment is always under question when the uses of buildings are being changed.
right,
So different than a change of use permit or, multiple units within a unit. So septic assessment is always on the table.
right, okay. So I did see that then, okay, and is there a cost associated?
$75.
And then if there was something that wasn't right, then there could be potentially more cost to
They
them.
may have to upgrade at their own expense, yes.
Okay,
So if the house, say, currently is on septic and it was a 3-bedroom home and they're proposing a 4 or 5-bedroom home, that would invoke assessment. Additional bedrooms, additional plumbing, and additions greater than 15% invoke a sewage assessment.
To be clear, that's not a short-term rental policy. If the standard homeowner had a large lot, they had the sufficient room to meet the planning requirements to add an accessory dwelling unit, they would have to do an septic assessment. If they had a 3-bedroom home and they were to add 5 bedrooms, whether or not those are rentals or not, they'd have to do a septic assessment. So that's just reiterating the current building code. That's not necessarily an additional obligation for an STR. That's an obligation for any property who's adding dwelling units.
yes, I completely understood that. In fire, we don't have the fire chief here, but when it came to the fire inspections, I really didn't, we didn't really get into what did that entail. There didn't seem to be a lot of clear direction on that.
My understanding is fire inspections would entail the same thing that any other rental unit would require. So the difference was, instead of going in on random checks or after an incident, which the fire chief are supposed to do through the community safety programs, they would go in ahead of time before the license was issued.
Yes, and what did that entail? Like making sure there were smokes in the appropriate place, carbons?
Making sure the property meets the Ontario Fire Code.
Okay, because long-term rentals, they don't go in to long-term rentals and do that. So it's not any rent.
If you were to build a new long-term rental, through the building permit, an inspection would occur through building services, would it not?
Through building services, yes.
If you were to create one.
Correct.
But if you had a home and you chose to rent it long-term, you do not fall under.
Under Occupiers Liability Act, you are required to ensure safety. Under the Ontario Fire Code, you're required to provide to ensure safety. So they may not necessarily do an active investigation because the legislation doesn't currently sit there for that. However, you are required to meet that legislation through provincial law.
Right, you're required to meet the legislation, but it isn't prompting the fire chief to go out. Okay, and I just want to be clear, did we settle costs of $700 for this license? I know we had some talk about it and I don't know where we did.
Yep.
And where it says exempt, owner occupied exempt, that is from the fees but not from the whole, going through the whole licensing regime, correct?
Ms. Flynn?
Sure. The direction we were given was they would basically just register. There wouldn't be any fee associated with it. They would just be giving us their name, contact information, and notifying us that they were renting out rooms within their dwelling or an accessory dwelling unit, but they wouldn't be required to go through the full checklist.
Okay,
Yeah, direction. I understood that we were.
okay. I just wanted to be clear on that point. Okay, thank you. So those were my questions. I would completely agree with Councillor Bovet at this point. I don't think we've accomplished anything we've set out to accomplish due to the legal restrictions on this, unfortunately.
Thank you. Clerk?
If I could just clarify for Councillor Wolvet and others, so at the last meeting, there was two motions passed regarding short-term rentals. The first motion that was passed was that staff take feedback from council regarding the licensing bylaw, and we went through all the provisions we needed information on, and that it be brought forward for consideration with the OPA and zoning bylaw amendments that are required that would then put the licensing bylaw in place. So that was the first piece of direction. And then we had talked about a registration bylaw, and it was suggested that that happen, and it could happen in the interim, because even if we did approve the OPA, ZBA and the licensing bylaw, we wouldn't have any fines approved for at least 6 to 9 months through the province. So the registration bylaw would get us going, but when we got looking into it further, it's the same thing. You're still doing all the same things. So you're correct. There was a motion that directed staff to look into a registration bylaw, and this report is a result of that because they are so similar, and our understanding that it was a fill-in piece. It wasn't just a totally separate registration bylaw. It was, if we can't do this now, we need to put the registration bylaw. So there was two motions that passed at that time. So on the table in front of council is a motion about registration versus licensing and just receiving the report. So that's the first thing. The other motion that's still on the floor, carried and standing, is that the OPA, ZBA and the licensing bylaw would come back to a public consultation meeting. So that would give the public time to speak about this in front of council. Whereas previously it's been public with staff, and you guys have been receiving correspondence throughout the process, but you haven't had that public meeting. So if council wants to carry on, that's fine. If you want to reconsider items in the zoning bylaw, or you want to consider stopping that process altogether before that gets discussed, it would need to be a motion of reconsideration.
Thank you, Clerk. The council, we have a motion on the floor that we're going to deal with first. I'll read it again. Moved by Councillor Van Claveren, seconded by Deputy Mayor McEwen, that the report by Ella Flynn, Executive Assistant, Deputy Clerk, and Adam Sabansky, Chief Administrative Officer, dated March 6, 2024, regarding the short-term rental licensing versus registration be received for information. Are we all clear on that motion? Yes, Councillor Wolvet.
One more thing on registering of short-term rentals, which I believe at the last meeting is all I meant was let's proceed with registration period. We'll deal with the bylaw in due time once we get some information back. But even on your own words here, registering short-term rentals, pros, would be easy for staff to implement. Number two, would be less cumbersome for STR owners to submit information. Number three, it would allow the town to collect data to locate STRs within the municipality. That's what I was getting at when that motion was made. And that's right in yours saying like, this would be easy to do. So why complicate it and why go any farther? Let's find out what's going on with this before we put this, how many pages of strict bylaws into place. We don't need it.
Well,
That's all I have to say. And
council has information before them today. The direction that staff received was to develop a short-term licensing bylaw.
no,
That was
sir.
the direction
No.
that we received in a
Let us
previous
finish,
meeting.
please.
We received direction to bring you a short-term licensing bylaw. We then received direction on what we wanted regulated in that short-term licensing bylaw. We also received direction to look into our lawyers in regards to just not allowing short-term licensing, only allowing them in commercial, only allowing them for owner occupied. And through all those statements, questions, and direction of council, this is the short-term licensing bylaw that we've provided you. If council does not want to move forward with the short-term licensing bylaw, then the motion can be reconsidered and it can be stopped here today if you wish. If you want to move in a different direction with the registration bylaw, again, you should probably eliminate the licensing bylaw by reconsidering it and turning it down, and then providing a different motion that directs staff to bring forth a registration bylaw. Again, we've been over this a number of times in the last few years. Staff did not go out and make this bylaw based on our comments and concerns. We were very careful to make this bylaw based off of comments, concerns brought forth by yourselves and the public. We are not, if this is not what you want as a group, then we are more than happy to stop right here, right now, and head in a different direction you see fit. We're only bringing the information that was asked for in previous motions and directions of council.
Counselor Wolbett,
I do not recall telling you to go ahead and put this report together, comparing licensing versus registration. Motion that was made was for you to go away. The motion was to proceed with registration. The rest of all that stuff, you're not wrong. However, I don't recall approving any bylaw to the point where now we got to go back to reconsideration. I thought this was just an ongoing, we haven't approved any bylaw. Now you're saying we would have to go to reconsideration to put it through or to change it? I'm sorry, but you've got me left out in the dark here on this, because we have not agreed on all this stuff, and we have not agreed at any of these meetings on this stuff. Yes, we've brought back information for us. Yes, that's the reports. Appreciate that. But here we are now debating with you guys and what we're asking for. Ask for registration. Now you go away and you compare registration to licensing? I don't get it. I don't know why you would have done that.
The direction last meeting was to look into a registration bylaw. Actually, the clerk has the motion.
Sorry, I have a separate motion, but I think what happened, Bob, was, Councilor Wolbett, was that a registration bylaw we thought was simple, one page kind of thing. And once got looking into it, it's a little bit more cumbersome and says pretty much the exact same things that this bylaw says. So, and the reason it needs to be reconsidered is because the last motion, you're right, that licensing bylaw has not been approved. I 100% agree with you. Don't feel like it is. And that's what Adam's saying. You still have time. It just was received with amendments, like directed staff to make the amendments, and it's coming to a public meeting. So right now the motion's saying you guys want it to come to a public meeting. If you don't want it to go there, just open this back up and turn it down, and that closes the book neat and tidy. If not, it's left on the table to go to a public meeting, and then it will never go there, and nothing will, like, we don't know where you sit either way. So if you go to public meeting, we hear from the public and planners that talk about OPA and ZBA and what changes need to be made. And then you decide not to do it, you get feedback in the public in front of you that decides not, then you don't have to approve it then. But you can't, this is where you've directed us now by motion, so we can't keep talking about it unless it's made to reconsider, so we can have that discussion. But the registration bylaw ended up being the exact same thing. If you want us to go away and draft a 10, 12-page bylaw that says the exact same thing for your consideration, like, that's fine. We can do that, but it just mirrored it so much, and our understanding was it was a stopgap while we waited for things to go on. And we're ready for it to go. It's not, we don't need this stopgap.
Counselor Wolbett, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I guess there's no sense taking it any farther, but when you look at your own words in here, how simple registration would be, that's your own words, that's your own report. That's what I think you should do. Move ahead with simple registration, shelve the rest of it for a period of time. I know you're saying you can't, but still don't think we've agreed to anything solid on any bylaw.
I don't think
But
we've, we haven't gone to public consultation yet, so nothing's been agreed. It's just, as the clerk has said, to try to move this forward.
This isn't my report, but the pros and cons, I think we're showing you that we've done all this work. We've worked together with council. We've heard from the public. We've done all this work and put everything into the licensing bylaw to start over and make almost the exact same thing in a registration bylaw. So that's where the pros and cons were. It's like trying to show you and explain to you to see the weight of each one. Like, we've already done all this. This is going to be the same. And then where does that leave the other piece that we already worked on? I don't want to speak for
Your registration bylaw is essentially this bylaw, stripping out the inspections and stripping out the set fines,
fees.
set fee and fees. So our direction, as per the motion on the screen, was to bring this forward. Yes, we did provide direction to prepare a registration bylaw. Our understanding is that registration bylaw, again, was to be used as a stopgap for enforcement but that doesn't achieve what we were told council wanted for enforcement. Yes, staff has prepared this bylaw for you. It is a council decision. We are not married to this anyway. We are only proceeding on how we're directed. If council wants to head a different direction, the reason why we suggested reconsideration, if you don't feel that this is what you want, this is a good time to stop and reconsider that before we go to the public meetings and go through that process. There's no point of going to a public meeting on a bylaw that you're not comfortable with if that's not what you want. If you'd rather move forward with something else, this would be a great time to do it to avoid that additional cost.
Counselor Baising?
Yes, your worship, thank you. I think we have to remember the fact that it was the public that came to us wanting this put in. I don't live next door to an Airbnb. I'm not the one putting up with the weekends of partying and everything else. They're the ones that wanted this brought up. We brought it up. We went to consultation with the public. This is the stuff that come out of it. A lot of the stuff we wanted got took out. The lawyers can't do that, can't do that. I understand that part. But to just register, I don't understand. To register, wait a year, and then we decide we're gonna do it, which is gonna be another year before we can get the bylaw in force. Now we're 2 years down the road. All we're doing is pushing it down the road to the point where another election comes up and then we don't have to worry about it. You know, we said we were gonna try and do something with it. My feeling is we take it to the public and here's what we've got. You happy with it or not? And if they're not, then we drop it. If they are, then we go ahead. We gotta do something.
Thank you, Counselor Baising. Counselor Rodriguez?
Thank you, your worship. I just want to say thank you, Aaron, for that clarification, because I got confused there for a minute. My thoughts though did equal Councillor Wolvet that I thought it was well to go ahead with the registration program, and we could collect some data and information to understand whether we needed to proceed. So I mean, that's completely how I took my takeaway from it.
It was to prepare a bylaw. When we reviewed the preparing the bylaw, we didn't feel it saved any time and you would just end up with duplicate bylaws in the end.
Yeah,
That's
no,
why we brought this forward today.
which is fine. It's just because we were told that day that it was gonna be something simple and easy we could put in, but we learned obviously that it wasn't. So in all fairness, that's where I think things changed.
Okay, we've had good discussion on it. Anything further before I call for the vote?
Can I ask for recorded vote, please?
This is
This is just on.
just for the report to
That's
receive.
for the
Oh,
report.
just receiving it?
You still want a recorded vote to receive the report?
No, you can receive it. Just no agreement.
Thank you, Counselor.
So just to be clear, unless council reconsiders the motion, we will move forward to public consultation. After public consultation occurs, the bylaw will be come back. If council at that time feels that the bylaw doesn't represent what council wants, what the public wants, if it can be turned down, and then direction can be provided on an alternative direction or no direction moving forward.
Everybody's clear on that? Call for the vote. You want me to read it again or are we good? Okay, we're good. All those in favor? Carried. Passed. Thank you, staff, for the work that you did pulling that together. I'm going to go to item 5.2. Motion by Councillor Van Claveren, seconded by Councillor Wolvet, that the report by Adam Sabansky, Chief Administrative Officer, dated March 20th, 2024. Regarding the request for exemptions from property standards and tidy yards bylaws for residential developments be received, and the staff be directed to continue to apply the property standards and tidy yards bylaw to residential developments under construction. Also, you had an opportunity to review that. Mr. Sabansky is here, who wrote the report. Mr. Sabansky, anything to add to it before I go for questioning?
No, sir, I just wanted to thank the planning and the building staff for helping me gather information in this regard. We wanted to make sure that we were acting similarly to our competitors in both Plympton County and Middlesex County. And what we confirmed that is, yes, we are acting in a similar manner to them. And in some cases, we're actually less restrictive.
Okay, thank you. Questions from I'm gonna go to my left this time. Councillor Wolvet, any questions?
No, sir.
Counselor Van Clavering?
No questions, although I was gonna ask Adam if he could explain the complaint procedure.
Thank you.
It would be neat for everybody to.
So yes, the town of Plympton-Wyoming through the county of Lambton receives all of its complaints digitally now. It's really important that all complaints be submitted digitally so that they can be properly tracked and validated. You can see the complaint portal website on the staff report. So any complaints in regards to a residential construction site issue regarding tidy yards, property standards, or any general bylaw infraction can be submitted through that portal. And then the County of Lambton's staff can investigate on our behalf.
And they're non-anonymous complaints, is that correct?
That is correct. The town, clerk may have to help me with the actual legislation, but it's my understanding that legislation requires for a complaint to be validated. The person does need to disclose their identity to do so. Otherwise, it could be frivolous and doesn't get investigated usually.
And there's no limit to the amount of time someone can complain about the same issue?
At some point, it could become frivolous and vexatious. At that point, typically the person who's submitting the complaint would be informed that staff have done their investigation and have determined that there is no sound findings regarding the complaint. And then they would be notified that no further action would be required unless new evidence is provided.
Yes.
Thank you. I just wanted to add that, although you're attaching your name to it, rather than it being a bot or someone submitting 10, staff does not release that when dealing with the complaint. We're not allowed to say, I got a complaint, it was from XYZ. So that's kept confidential.
Who doesn't allow that? Who is stipulated that that's anonymous? And
I think it's our policy. I think if in the only situation that it would become to have to be released if it went to a legal court, we would be required to release that. We do let people know that when it's at our level, we can keep that confidentiality, but above and beyond that, if it goes to court, then they can request that.
and is there a fee to place a complaint?
Okay.
Not playing anything, right?
No. Not planning to complain. However, if I did have a complaint, either place my name on it or I pay for that privilege. I don't think you could have it both ways, in my humble opinion. Now we're getting sidetracked, but thank you.
Deputy
No, I have nothing to add to this.
Rodriguez?
Thank you, Worship. I kind of feel a little bit like Councillor Wovat here on this one. I did not interpret this when we were talking about it to mean that we should get an exemption from the bylaw. I thought you were doing a review of the bylaws anyway, and that this would be brought up. I did not think that this was going to some special report and that there was an exemption asked. But in saying that, I did look at other jurisdictions as well, and it would be correct that, yeah, this is pretty standard development, so. Thank you.
Counselor Basie?
Well, as mentioned, when they were here requesting this, it's all in their subdivision agreement. They agree to all this stuff that they're gonna do. And then once they get into it, it costs money. We're not gonna do it no more. The one, when I'm out doing the committee of adjustment stuff, I'm around all the one lot subdivision agreement went in, services went in, and nothing has been done. Like, there's not a house there yet. Model homes put in, and the weeds are waist deep. Like, if I live next door to it, why do I have to put up with it? I'm not making any money off of it, you know. Once a month, taking a bush hog and running down the weeds and stuff. That's all they're really asking. So, no, I agree with this. They agree to it, then do it. That's no exemption, no nothing. Everybody else has to do it. That's all I have to say about that.
Thank you. Counselor Bojic?
Nothing further from me, thank you.
All right. Council will call for the vote. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, council, let's go to staff reports. Item 6, we're gonna go to 6.1. Motion by Councillor Basie, seconded by Councillor Rodriguez, that the report by Patty Richardson, senior planner and dated March 18th, 2024, regarding the removal of holding zone from lands described as lots 1 to 10 and block 11, registered plan 25M-101, known municipally as 575 to 593 Plympton Street, be received. That bylaw 31 of 2024, being a bylaw to remove the H holding symbol, be taken as having been read 3 times and passed, and the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign the said bylaw accordingly. The author of this report, Ms. Richardson, is here. Ms. Richardson, do you have anything to add before I go to council for questions?
No, I do not.
Councillor Bojan, anything from you?
Nothing for me, thank you.
Councillor Basie?
Nothing from me, thank you.
Councillor Rodriguez? Deputy?
Thanks.
Van Claveren?
No, sir, thank you.
Councillor Wolvet?
No, sir.
All right, call for the vote. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, council will go to item 6.2. Motion by Councillor Rodriguez, seconded by Councillor Bojan. That the report prepared by Lisa Smeekins, planning technician, dated March 19th, 2024, regarding deeming Main Street as a public highway be received, and that bylaw 32 of 2024 be taken as having been read 3 times, and the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign the said bylaw accordingly. Smeekins, as the author of this report, anything to add to it?
Nothing to add.
Councillor to my left. Councillor Wolvet, anything?
Nothing from me, sir.
Deputy?
Deeming this now. It's just a portion of it, is it not? Like between the new subdivision and the one that, the part that Ontario, or one of the hydros, I think, had. So, there aren't any drainage issues or anything with it, or?
Mr. Chair,
who did this? Yes.
This got missed. It should have been deemed at the exact same time
Okay,
as the
alright.
lands were assumed.
Yeah.
So this section of road was actually evaluated when we assumed the whole subdivision, but Lisa found through going through the file that, and our planners, that it hadn't been designated as a roadway. So we're now
Okay.
following that up to make sure it's legal now.
Right,
Councillor Rodriguez?
Thank you. Just one question. Why do you call it a public highway? Isn't it a municipal road?
Yes, but that is a legal term that is used to, and when deeming a roadway or a public municipal road. A public highway is just a legal term for it.
Councillor Basie?
Yes, who's paying the legal fees? I would hope it'd be the developer. But not us.
I think just to register.
Mr. Jenkins?
So this portion was actually deeded to the town through a consent process done in 2019. So this portion isn't owned by the developer anymore. So when the portion to the east was done over here, this was all still owned by the developer up until we assumed it. So this is actually our property. It has been our property since 2019. So any legal fees in relation to registering it would be the responsibility of the town, since it is town-owned property.
In hindsight, the proper time to recover those legal fees would have been in 2019 when we received the lands.
Dr. Bojan?
Mr. Basie took my question. I'm good, thank you.
All right, call for the vote. All those in favor? Great. Item 7, anything under bylaws, clerk?
Nothing at this time.
Okay, any correspondence that we've received since this was put together?
Nothing for action required, your worship.
All right, let's go to item 9.1, recommended reading and routine approval. Has anybody got one sitting there that?
We look in the other package just in case. Oh, there it is.
Found it. Okay, Lisa, who did that?
That was me.
Oh,
I'll admit.
all right. Motion by Counselor Bojan, seconded by Counselor Rodriguez. The correspondence items A to H relating to recommended reading and routine approval and information items not otherwise addressed by resolution be noted as received by the Plympton-Wyoming Council and filed accordingly. So council, that's items A to H. Beginning on my left, Counselor Wolbett, anything from you?
I do not, sir.
Counselor Van Claveren?
Nothing for me, sir, except I would like to say something smart about the Get It Done Act, but I'm gonna pass.
That's a wise decision.
Yes.
Robert, yes. Deputy?
No, nothing from me. The committee of adjustment was extremely busy.
Well, it has, I think you had what, 3 meetings in the month?
Incredible.
You didn't burn Counselor Basie out, did you?
Well, he was starting to close his eyes.
Good job by the Committee of Adjustment. There was a lot on there. Work by them. Counselor Rodriguez, anything from you?
Thank you. Just item H. The new regulations as it relates to the St. Clair Conservation Authority. Limiting their abilities to do certain things, and certain things will be exempt from permits. So it was an interesting way to learn that, sitting on the Conservation Authority Board under recommended reading, because they haven't even brought this to the boards. Yeah.
You should get on the executive.
Right.
That's too bad. You have to learn it this way.
Yeah. That was it.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Basie?
Nothing for me, thank you.
Counselor Bojan?
Nothing, thank you.
So Counselor Rodriguez, you just wanted to draw our attention to that.
Yeah, there is no resolution.
All right, call for the motion. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, new business relating to planning. Counselor Basie, anything from you? Yeah, I mean,
I know. See? That's right.
It's a tough file too.
I don't know if it's planning, but the trailer issue we had, anything been done with that? Trailer in the front yard,
Oh, yeah.
north end of town?
oh, the trailer. Okay, I know what you mean now. Sorry. Mr. Sabansky, are you or Mr. De Silva going to take that?
I don't think Mr. Silva's been very much involved in it. It's been mostly Randy with my oversight.
Okay.
So the trailer issue, letters were sent out to the area in question. The vast majority of the property owners have found compliance. We did follow up with the second letter, which took a more educational tone, and we do have a few more property owners who came into compliance. There are a few property owners who are very much upset about the bylaw and do not want to meet the bylaw. We're going to work with them to try to find a way to comply. However, many of the property owners feel that our bylaw is very much out of date and does not meet the needs of the community as a whole today. So I am encouraging them to make sure that they attend the public meetings for the the comprehensive zoning bylaw amendment or in correspondence, so that if council as a whole sees that that section of the bylaw is probably not meeting the needs of the community today, the planning consultant who is hired to do the zoning bylaw amendment can provide you options to adjust the bylaw accordingly. So again, until that time, those property owners are not in compliance, and we will continue to work with them to find ways to bring them towards compliance.
Thank you.
Counselor?
Sorry. What trailers? Like, it sounds like there's multiple trailers.
Randy, did you want to do a very brief description of what's required of travel trailers when they're on a property?
Through your worship, the zoning bylaw has provisions technically stating where a travel trailer can be located. It's utility trailers, not just travel trailers, but the complaint was, I guess, highlighted towards travel trailers, so we took more of the route of going through
that way. Again, it's all on a complaint basis, but in the zoning bylaw, it says that a travel trailer cannot be located in the front yard. I think the exterior side yard, right triangle or in the permitted, in the driveway as the parking spot. So therefore, when the travel trailer letter went out, I think a lot of people kind of were keeping them in those locations, so really can only be located in the rear yard of a property or the interior side yard as well.
So the complaint was generally concentrated at the northwest corner of Wyoming, basically west of Broadway and north of Confederation Line. As I've said before, we only enforce our bylaws on a complaint basis. That is why we only targeted the area of question and did not send it to the entire municipality as a whole.
That's why they were all on the mayor's doorstep. Councilor Bojan, anything from you?
Nothing, thank you.
Councilor Rodriguez, planning related? Deputy? Councilor Van Claveren?
Not for me, sir.
Councilor Wolbett?
The only question I would ask under new business is the grant for affordable housing and that. I heard something the other day that nobody in Lambton County got that grant, any part of that grant?
Thank you through the chair, if I may. Thanks to the sticky note clerk that I missed in business arising, I will now cover this under new business. So correct, only 3 municipalities in Lambton County applied for the CMHC Housing Accelerator Fund. Ourselves, Petrolia and Warwick. Unfortunately, none of us were awarded that grant. The grant is concentrated in higher density areas in a number of northern communities. Thank you to Ella, who's no longer here to get the praise. She's organizing a follow-up meeting with CMHC so we can discuss how better to achieve higher density housing in Plympton-Wyoming and programs they have that might help with us. We also met with Peter Frascatos MP for London West, I believe.
Yes.
Thank you. And we did have a discussion, myself, the CAOs from the other municipalities, as well as the mayors, did discuss the matter with Peter and expressed our concern with the government not making it more readily available to rural Ontario. We feel rural Ontario has a place to play in affordable housing or missing middle housing. Our land is typically cheaper than in the large urban centers, and we typically can bring things forward in a faster fashion. We may not have access to, transit and some of the other conveniences of the larger urban areas, but our cost of living is generally lower. So we feel that they missed the opportunity to intensify some of the population in rural Ontario, and we advocated for them to consider additional grants to help us do so in the future.
It is disappointing that we didn't get anything at all. I mean, we all know in this room that in order for us to proceed with affordable housing or any big development like that, we need extra funds for our sewage systems and water systems. And without that, without the funding, we just can't go forward. So it is kind of a shame because I think that, the areas here in Lambton counties, communities like ours would be more than willing and was willing to proceed with seeing what we could do for affordable housing. So I don't know, like we'd be going to the good roads, whether it's worth setting up anything to speak to anybody. I think you guys already have maybe.
Yeah, this is federal.
Yeah.
So most of the good roads will be dealing with the provincial.
Yeah.
But as our CAO has said, we were very clear with Mr. Fragatis that our concerns were not being met. It's back in his court. And then, as he said, Ella will be dealing with that as well.
And to add to that, if I may, the Housing Accelerator Fund was more of a planning and initiative. It was meant to kickstart some of the planning processes and to, waive development charges and kind of concentrate on that. The application stated that it's not meant to concentrate on services or infrastructure. The grant that is currently coming out, the Housing Accelerator Enabling Fund, is concentrated in infrastructure. And we do have a motion at hand that has directed our Director of Public Works to apply to that fund. And we will be applying to that fund to target some of the projects in our wastewater master plan.
Thank you. Councilor Rodriguez?
Thank you, your worship. Exactly what I was gonna say, that the provincial fund over 1.2 billion. It does involve the rural municipalities and not just strictly for larger urban centers.
It absolutely does, and the province just announced late last week that they've increased the amount of. So we're hoping that we will be successful in our grant application.
On that. Okay. Nothing else in our new business? Okay, council, I'm gonna take us now, instead of going into closed session, which is next on our list, we're going to take a 9-minute break. Personal break, and then at 6 o'clock, we'll come back at our public meeting. So at this time, I'll take us to a short personal break, and we'll return for 6 o'clock.
You're unmuted.
Right. Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to those that have joined with us in the council chamber for our planning public meeting. Approval of a draft plan of subdivision 38T-23001. Agenda. For those in council, I would ask you to ensure that your communication devices are put in vibrate or shut off, please. Oh, I would remind council, if you have a declaration of pecuniary interest, you declare it at the appropriate. Public meeting that you're at this evening is conducted by the town of Plympton-Wyoming Council on behalf of the corporation of the county of Lambton to hear an application for approval draft plan for subdivision section 10.9.1, the county of Lambton official plan. It requires a public meeting to be held before the local municipal council for proposed plans of subdivision. Subject land is described as part of lot 16, section 1, geographically the township of Plympton, Wyoming. Sorry, the township of Plympton, parts 1 and 2, plan 25R 9570, part 1, plan 25R 9802, east of Broadway Street and south of Isabella Street in the town of Plympton, Wyoming. So Lisa, has total notification been given the proper avenues for this meeting?
So since this meeting is something required by the county of Lambton, their planning technician, Annette Major, was actually the one who sent out the notice, but she did provide me confirmation. There is confirmation that signage was installed on site in compliance with requirements in the Planning Act. It was posted on January 18th, and then an updated sign was posted on March 4th. It was also circulated to agencies and members of the public as required under the Planning Act. So all notification requirements have been complied with, and we do have confirmation from the county of Lambton to confirm this.
Thank you. Now I'm going to read something again, and it may sound like I'm repeating myself, and probably I am, but I want to make it clear to our residents of the reason for the meeting and why we're here tonight. So this meeting is being conducted again by the town of Plympton, Wyoming Council on behalf of the corporation of the county of Lambton to hear an application for approval of a draft plan of subdivision. Under Bill 23, More Homes Built Faster Act of 2022, the Planning Act was amended to delete the requirement for a statutory public meeting to be held to consider a draft plan of subdivision application. However, section 10.9.1 of the County of Lambton official plan requires a public meeting to be held before a local municipal council for a proposed plan of subdivision prior to the County of Lambton making a decision on the draft plan of subdivision application. That's why we're here tonight. Further, the Planning Act is amended by Bill 23, the More Homes Built Faster Act 2022, does not allow any decision made by the County of Lambton respecting a draft plan of subdivision application to be appealed by the public to the Ontario Land Tribunal. Any comments received on this application at this public meeting will be provided to the County of Lambton for its consideration before making a decision, and will be considered by this council before it makes a recommendation to the County of Lambton. The draft plan of subdivision application 38T-23001 has been submitted by 2798847 Ontario Limited, requesting draft approval from the County of Lambton. The lands subject of the application are located east of Broadway Street and south of Isabella in Wyoming. The applicant is proposing to create 114 single detached dwelling lots with frontages ranging from 18 to 22.4 meters. a block for park purposes, which would be block 115 on the map, a block for storm water management, block 116, and 2 blocks for future development, blocks 117 and 18. The proposed development would be serviced with municipal water, sanitary sewers. I have a motion by Councillor Bojan, seconded by Councillor Rodriguez, that the report by Patty Richardson, Senior Planner, and Randy Burke, Planner, dated March 18th, 2024, regarding the draft plan of subdivision application 38T-23001 be received. Ms. Richardson and Ms. Burke are both here. Anything you would like to add?
Yes, I would, Your Worship. I just want to give a brief presentation on what this plan is about and the things that are falling out of it with respect to servicing in parkland and its compliance with the official plan and zoning. You see, if you could adjust that plan up just a little bit so we can get the full plan. There, that's right. Okay, so the mayor outlined the application for everyone, but I thought it might be best if we just point out the things that are proposed on the plan. So you can see these are the 114 single-family dwelling lots that are proposed. There's 2 connections in this plan to Broadway Street, here and here. And when you drive down the street, you can see the vacant entrance ways into the subdivision. There are 2 future development blocks, which is this block here and this one here. They are proposed in a overall concept plan at this time for single family dwellings, but they would have to come forward for additional approvals for those blocks to develop. So we're just really considering the 114 in this approval. This block right here, coming down here, this is a stormwater detention ditch that's going to come through the subdivision, and we'll collect all the stormwater from the lots and bring it down to this point, at which there'll be another drainage ditch that goes down to the drain further to the south. So currently in the official plan, did everybody, and I guess I'll just ask any questions on just an outline before we proceed with all the other stuff?
The retention pond, where does it come in?
It's in this area right here.
Okay.
It's a long drainage channel.
So it's not a retention pond?
Not presently, and I'll get into that for you. Okay, so currently the lands are vacant. The lands to the west and north, they're occupied by residential dwellings and commercial uses. Lands to the south and east are used for agriculture, and as everyone knows, the cemetery is also up here in this corner right here. Currently in the Plympton County official plan, the lands are designated urban center. And of course, residential uses are permitted and encouraged in the urban centers. And they are to be on full municipal services, except for extenuating circumstances where there aren't any. We have that here. The subject lands are designated residential in our town official plan. And the primary use of lands in a residential designation are for residential uses, primarily single detached dwellings. Up to 25 units per hectare. This development, as it's proposed right now, is 8.2 units per hectare, so it's well within the parameters set in our official plan. And they are all single detached dwellings right now. Our OP is very specific on how lands are to be serviced. All lots in our urban areas are to be on full municipal services, sewer, water, and storm sewer. So the 114 lots proposed will be on a gravity sewer system that will be installed, of course, in the roadways in the subdivision by the subdivider. They will connect with our existing sanitary on Broadway Street in these 2 locations here. However, in the future, should these future development blocks proceed, it will require a pump station and a force main from these lands into the existing gravity sewer that's servicing the 114 lots. That's not proposed presently, but that's what would have to happen for the balance of the lands to develop. I can tell council that Our wastewater treatment plant can accommodate this development. We have capacity in it. Okay, we'll go on to the water system. Of course, we're required to provide a municipal water system within this subdivision. Again, it will be located in the roads installed by the subdivider. We have allowing this development to proceed doesn't pose any issues for our water supply. There will be two connections, basically Broadway Street, 3, I guess, and Isabella. So there'll be connections to our existing water mains. The next thing is the plan requires that we provide stormwater management, and I touched on that. The stormwater management will be a channel at this point for the 114 lots. It will outlet through an outlet structure and an oil grit separator that will be down here, and then flow over in a ditch on the lands to the south to the Robinson Parker drain. The subdivider has advised the municipality that they have an easement over the lands to the south to provide for the storm to be outlet to the drain. In the future, however, should these two blocks develop, this drainage channel will disappear and a stormwater management pond is proposed for this corner. It will outlet the same way through a drainage channel to the south into the drain, but this will be replaced with a wet dry pond at the corner. The subdivider did have a traffic impact study done and submitted with this, and it's been reviewed, and the conclusion is there will be no adverse impacts in traffic in the area. So generally, staff are satisfied with the servicing proposed by the subdivider. However, any approval of this draft plan or any recommendation by this council to the County of Lambton should be conditional on the subdivider satisfying the town with respect to the provision of water, sanitary, storm, and all utilities that are to be installed internal and external to the proposed subdivision in compliance with municipal standards. And you will find that condition in the conditions that Randy and I have recommended to you at the end of the report. With respect to parkland, in the summary of the application, block 115 is the proposed parkland dedication. As you know, developments are required to either provide land or money to the municipality. Land is 5% of the area of the land. This block meets the intent for the 114 lots. We'll have to look for further parkland dedication or monies if the balance of the lands develop. I know it looks as though the park's really not in the middle of the development or accessible, but once this all develops, it will be more central to the whole of the subdivision. Currently, the zoning on the land is residential 1. The residential 1 zone permits single detached dwellings on lots with minimum lot area of 620 square meters and minimum lot frontages of 15 meters. The lots proposed in this draft plan have frontages ranging from 18 to 22 meters and areas ranging from 810 square meters to 946 square meters, and thus comply. There is a holding zone on the property, and we just lifted one on another property today, but the holding zone stays on the property until such time as the municipality is satisfied that all the conditions of draft approval have been met, subdivision agreement's been entered into, and the development's ready to go. It will be brought back to council as we did tonight for the other property on Plympton Street and lifted when everything's satisfied. Overall, staff is happy with the layout of the subdivision. It reflects good planning. We're happy with the servicing, and we think that the plan integrates into the existing neighborhood and it's compatible. It's certainly connected to our existing municipal streets. We have received some comments as a result of the circulations we've done. Before I did this report, we received one comment from Bonnie Schmidt at 473 Broadway Street, expressing concern about the traffic speed, vehicle parking, and view obstruction on Broadway Street. and difficulties exiting her driveway in Broadway Street. She's concerned that the development might add to this. We forwarded Mrs. Smith's comments to the county because it's a county road, and I understand the county has reached out to speak with her. We have agency comments. The St. Clair Region Conservation Authority advised that this is outside of their regulation limit, so they have no recommendations for conditions. Lambton Kent District School Board advises that they are already facing some accommodation issues at their school, and they'll have to look to see where they can accommodate any school children that are a result of living in this development. Enbridge Gas has asked that they get any easements or agreements so that they can install gas there. That is a condition I've recommended on the draft approval, so it's there. Canada Post, of course, this will be post office boxes in the neighborhood, not at the general delivery at the post office. So Canada Post has a list of conditions that they require be placed on any draft approval. I've included those in my recommendations to you. Bell is requesting that if there's any easements for existing Bell structures on the property, that they be given the easements at no cost to Bell. And if there's any conflicts with their existing service there, that be dealt with by the subdivider at no cost to them. Now, we don't know that Bell will be the provider of internet and phone service here. So whether they are the provider or not, that will be dealt with through the subdivision agreement and with the county at the time. The County of Lambton Public Works Department did make some comments on the traffic study, and they're happy that it meets the expectations in the short term. They have said, however, if the development doesn't occur beyond a certain time frame, which is 2032, that perhaps it needs to be looked at again. And certainly it will need to be looked at when the future development blocks come online. So it's good for now, but we'll bear in mind that in the future it may have to be looked at again. So after all a review, we are recommending to council that they recommend to the County of Lambton that this application be approved, subject to all the conditions I've outlined at the end of my planning report.
Thank you, Ms. Richardson. There was one piece of correspondence, I don't know if you touched on or not, from residents on Isabella Street concerning the whether it would be used for construction.
Yes, that came in today. Lisa was going to speak to it, but we can speak to it now. Yes, there was concerns expressed about making sure that construction traffic doesn't use Isabella Street. And certainly we would not want construction traffic on Isabella that will come off Broadway. And we will deal with that through the subdivision agreement and with our pre-construction meeting with the subdivider when construction commences. So yes, we do not want it there either.
I think that's a fair question from the residents on this.
Yes.
Obviously. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Richardson. Okay, next, I just have to go to if there's any further comments from the applicant. Do you have anything further to add? Are you comfortable with what Ms. Richardson?
Patty did a great job of presenting. We did look at the draft comments last week, and I had some conversation back and forth, and it sounds like all my questions / concerns can be resolved through the development agreement through the further process. So
Thank you. Okay, questions from council. I'm going to begin on my right. Councilor Bojan.
Thank you, Worship. I guess the only thing, no real questions about the plan. I'd just like to, I understand concerns about traffic. We're talking up to 228 cars. So just building off of that, just to confirm, Mr. Spansky, is that traffic light at Confed and Broadway still scheduled for this summer? That project?
My director of public works.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's still planned for this summer and in coinciding with the Confederation line reconstruction.
That's really the only question I have.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Vacy.
Yes, your worship, thank you. I just questioned the storm water runoff. That if that's going to be adequate. Adding all that pavement, houses in, and then is it downstream going to be able to handle all that all at once? I think I'm looking at the wrong guy.
Well, we're used to looking at this guy. We're not looking at Silva. Yes, Mr. De Silva.
Yes, through your worship, that's a great question. And although you don't see a pond necessarily on this drawing here, there will be a channel that will be capable of retaining a 100-year storm event and releasing it to 2-year peak development level. So there is a channel that will be constructed with a controlled outlet that will only allow the water to release at a rate that's equivalent to the 2-year peak development rate for that land. And then it will go through an oil grit separator to enhance the quality of it as well. So there will, sorry, go ahead. I was just gonna say, there won't be any negative downstream impacts as a result of this plan.
And this will be dry
Correct.
during normal times.
Correct, a dry pond. Yeah.
Thank you. And I just questioned where the park's going, but it's down the road, so.
That's all I have. Thank you.
I think, Ms. Richardson had indicated where.
Yeah, I just,
Yes.
I don't find that central at all, but it's down the road.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go to our Director of Public Works. The drainage, is that an open ditch or closed?
Your worship, it's open.
Oh, it is open.
Yes, it is open.
So, but along the properties, there'll all be catch basins closed there.
Correct. It'll be like traditional storm sewers through the roads, catch basins in the roads, rear yard catch basins for every property. It's just the channel will be open. The channel that you see there.
Yeah.
North and south. Yeah.
That was it. Thank you.
Deputy?
Yeah, it's the drainage that's a concern. And so you were saying that there's gonna be a stormwater management pond, but in the form of a channel. Why not just do the regular pond now? And then for the future also. Just a question.
Well, this is what's being recommended by the developer's engineer in the short term. Or it could be for the long term. Who knows how long it will take to build out 114 single family dwellings. It's been reviewed by our engineer and third-party review, and there is no concerns with what's being proposed.
Or be it for me to question it.
Thanks. Thanks, Deputy. Councilor Van Claveren?
Nothing really for me as far as questions. A great report. Planning Department. There's Richardson and Burke. It would be needed for our procurement department to get them a pointer. That on your to-do. Oh, okay. We do have a pointer for you.
I can have one.
That's all for me. Thank you, sir.
Are those safety concerns with those?
Yeah.
Councilor Wilvet?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I have the same, not really concerns that the others are not here. Certainly the drainage. Drainage is always the biggest thing in any development, and especially at that end of Wyoming. It'll be the first time we've had water problems down there. It probably won't be the last, and it'll probably be within the 100 years, because if I'm believing all the experts, climate change, you can, there's moving everything forward. So that would be a big concern of mine. And as Mr. Vasey has already mentioned, the park, I think you might be able to find a better location for the park. Now, I'm not sure what you told us. Is that the whole drainage open pond right at the south end of that park? Yeah, is that all open? So the park would be right on the open drainage ditch is what it's just a comment, because I know we're not going to solve that.
At this point, yes.
Yeah, and that park may have been better served up towards the graveyard there, but mentioned drainage, that's a big concern. Fiber, I think we need to make sure that at least the conduit is all put in for fiber to be installed, and I know that's later down the road too, but it's something you want to make sure you do in advance. So other than that, yeah, I don't have any other concerns right now.
Mr. Sabansky?
So just because of my historical knowledge of the area from the 10 years I've been here. So currently the lots at the northwest corner of the property drain north through a 100-plus-year-old tile drain, which we've had challenges with. The lots off of Isabella and to that corner actually drain north through another municipal drain, which you have a problem with. Those drains both dump into the Stonehouse drain, which we're currently doing improvements because it's slow. So what this development is actually going to do is going to take basically the northmost row of houses out of the Stonehouse drain area that currently goes near Nettie's Way and take it all south around the urban area. So this actually should take some pressure off the Stonehouse drain and that surrounding area and deviate it around the urban area. So it actually should help out the current drainage patterns in the village of Wyoming.
Okay, can I ask one other question? Just the two areas that you haven't are not part of this development. If this is all approved, does that automatically approve those two areas also?
No, those two blocks would have to come back for further approvals. They are zoned R1, but to lay out roads and to lay out lots would require another approval, another subdivision approval.
Thank you.
Anything else from council? Okay, at this stage of the meeting, going to public participation, comments and questions from any of the members of the public. You can have a full council chamber. If anybody has a question, I ask you to go to the lectern, identify yourself for the record where you live, name and where you live, and you have 5 minutes. Is there anybody that has any questions or concerns? Yes.
I'm in direct,
Could you give us your name, please?
statement.
Okay.
I'm in the direct light of all traffic that comes down Isabel Street to Broadway. So will the traffic then will increase?
Isabel?
quite a bit On Isabel? I mean, it takes all the traffic now pretty well. It goes around and comes out at the opposite line to Broadway, but I just wondered how much would that increase? I should get bigger shutters.
I don't think so. Ms. Richardson?
Well, I think most of the traffic from this subdivision is going to exit onto Broadway through these two accesses here. That's not to say some people might go this way, but this is the more direct access out of the subdivision.
How did they get to Broadway?
There will be roads constructed. Notice the two openings on Broadway when you go by the property? Those were where that will be where the roads come out.
Okay. I hold you to it.
I know you will.
Are there any other questions? Yes. Could you give us your name, please?
Sharon Phipps. I live at 525 Isabella. And I have a question about Mr. Sabansky's referral to some of the drainage that's currently in place, changing from the municipal drains and actually alleviating some of the drainage that we're having issues with on Isabella now. Could you clarify that, please?
Yeah, so I'm gonna go up to the map. This is much easier. I got it. So when you look at I don't have it in front of me, but we have a number of old drawings that were done to kind of quantify the drainage areas in the Wyoming area. So this section right here, right now, drains to an old tile drain that goes through here, under Isabella, through a number of private properties, and then onto Nettie's Way and out. This section of land here currently drains through here to an old concrete tile drain, around through here, up and around there, and then through Nettie's Way and out. So what we'll be doing is taking that farmland currently out of those drainage areas and then bringing the water south so that it's no longer going through that older infrastructure.
So the western one you just pointed out actually runs down the side of our property. So will that drain no longer be used?
It'll still be used for the water north of the development lands, but the development lands themselves will have to, their backyards, the roads will have to go into the stormwater management system and exit as Mr. De Silva described to the south.
Okay,
Does that answer your question?
I think it does, yes.
Any further questions?
George Feenstra. You all know where I live. So you're saying that the lands on the north side of Isabella, those ones currently drain into what's known as the Scott Drain?
On the northeast corner of Isabella, that is correct.
What about on the northwest?
I would have to pull out the drain name, but there is a small old municipal drain that runs between a number of private properties at the northwest area.
Now they're gonna say it's coming the other way.
Phipps's live here. on the north side of Isabella. And you're saying that their property is gonna continue to drain where it is draining now. It's not gonna drain into those properties.
The existing properties, as they are, will continue to drain into the municipal drains that they do. If your property drains south, we'll be looking at that as we develop to put in mitigating measures. But if they drain into an existing municipal drain, they'll drain into that existing municipal drain.
So it's not gonna solve their problem at all. You said it was, and it's not going to.
Likely not unless
North side
water is
Isabella.
coming from the development.
Pardon me?
Unless the water is coming from the development, it lands. Development has to take care of their own water.
I understand that, but you said that it's gonna alleviate the problems that are happening on Isabella and Nettie's Way. Is it going to do that?
Alleviate is a strong word. It will reduce the amount of water heading north.
So all the water that's heading north now is still going to head north.
No, because there'll be some of the farmland that has water heading north into municipal drains that will no longer be going that direction.
Okay, well, I have, is my 5 minutes up?
Not quite, George, but you're doing okay.
I'm doing okay?
Keeping an eye on you.
So you're gonna run the water out of this system to the back corner, and you say that it's going to go through a regulator out of that corner to the existing ditch, which is the Robertson Parker drain. Is that correct?
That's the understanding I have, yes.
So when you have all this water coming out of these subdivisions and that ditch gets full, and that regulator is limiting the amount of water that can flow out of it, is that water gonna back up into those existing storm sewers as it is in other parts of Wyoming? Because you're regulating the amount of water that can get out of that drain. Once that drain's full, where's the water gonna go?
Through the chair, it's the intent of the stormwater management system to retain up to a 100-year storm event. So
That doesn't mean nothing to us lay people. What is a 100-year storm event?
it's a statistical storm event that occurs once every 100 years. So it's a very, very intense storm. It's one that you should statistically only get once every 100 years. So that channel is sized appropriately to retain 100% of that water that touches that subdivision in an event of that nature. And then it slowly releases it over time, over a period of about 24 hours typically.
So it would have held the water we had in this big storm we had, whenever that was, that we had 7 inches, or that ditch would have held all that water?
I honestly can't speak to whether it would hold 7 inches of water, but a statistical 100-year event, it will hold and retain. Stormwater management is a good thing. It doesn't just convey the water immediately out to the existing stormwater infrastructure. It holds it for a period of time and releases it slowly as the
I
system.
understand how that's why I said it releases it slowly.
Mhm.
But what happens when it's not releasing it fast enough? And that ditch is full? Are the drains gonna back up for these 114 homes that now we have pavement? Because we know pavement holds water and drains it a lot different than open land.
I'm not sure I totally understand your question. You're saying if everything downstream was completely submerged in water and water couldn't escape, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Then that would be a significant event and it would be affecting the entire municipality.
Okay. And also, can I keep going, Gary?
You've got 2 minutes, George.
2 minutes yet? So also you're gonna drain that Robertson Parker drain goes into the Stonehouse drain. It joins the Stonehouse at Canada Drive and Oil Heritage.
Yes.
Okay, the Stonehouse drain at that end now is not capable of handling all the water according to use that's coming through it now. It has to be dug out. And what happens when it gets to the other side of Churchill? When the Stonehouse drain is not cleaned out at that part? Because you're saying that the Stonehouse drain is not capable of handling all the existing water that's going into it. Correct?
We are making improvements to the Stonehouse drain, yes. To increase its capacity and do maintenance on it.
So by
Not in Enniskillen, you're not. So you can dig 100-foot hole in the ground, but if Enniskillen's is only 20 feet deep, Still ain't gonna go nowhere.
I guess what I'm trying to say is for the purpose of this development, there are stormwater management practices that are gonna be in place that will
Well,
mitigate any downstream effects.
I won't be here in 100 years, so I guess it don't matter. I don't think it's gonna.
I hope not.
Me neither. I don't think you've solved the problem for what Mrs. Phipps said at all. And for Adam to say that it's going to, I use the word alleviate, I don't know what the word was you used, but it's not gonna help them, it's not gonna help the people on Nettie's Way. As you have suggested.
I said it would reduce the amount of water.
Okay, how is it going to reduce? You're saying that the farmland on the south side of Isabella is not going to drain that way?
Because we're taking a number of drainage areas that currently go north into this northern section of Stonehouse Drain through the Nettie's Way area. Instead of having the land go north, we are taking those farmlands and bringing the water south as part of this development. So it's not going to eliminate any existing drainage areas, but it will take some of the water that currently goes into it from this property and brings it all south.
This property is on the south. What about the properties that are on the north?
That is a completely different discussion. That's not part of this development.
Nettie's Way is on the north. Isabella Street is on the north.
So this
So
property.
what drain are you taking from those two, from north of Isabella and rerouting south?
Again, there's a section of the Scott drain that this property drains into. That'll be taken and going south. There's a section to another old drain at the northwest corner that those lands will be taken and brought south, reducing some of the runoff to both of those drains.
So you're gonna take the Scott drain, the Barnes drain, and you're gonna reroute them?
No.
No,
We're taking a portion of the farmland that currently drains into that and bringing it south.
At the moment.
okay, so there's a catch basin here.
Gonna go this way.
That's, yeah, so that's one catch
But then
basin.
he talking about the areas over
There's a
here.
section of my land up here that drains into Isabella. Also be directed that way. So it's not going to solve the problems, but it's directing water as to being shoots theoretically.
Gonna go that way and then come to your house.
I've never had a problem at my house.
Yes.
Is there any further questions?
I have a question.
And then I'll go to Mary.
My
Nan.
name is Bonnie Smith. My name was brought up earlier by a lady here. I understand my concern about traffic in the area has been routed to somebody else. I got an email from him. I can't remember his name or who he was. Just to reiterate, there are times, especially in the summer, when traffic is allowed to sit on the shoulder of the road. Our neighbors have kids and they park their vehicles butting right up against either side of our driveway. And there are times literally where we have to cross the yellow line to make a right-hand turn. We have to nudge our vehicle forward very carefully. And the traffic there is often going fast. And no amount of police enforcement has brought that down. We have seen numerous fender benders there. People stop and people rear end them. Pets have gotten hit. I just have big concerns about safety for people like us who have driveways like that, where we can't see a thing coming when our neighbors are parked on the shoulder of their way.
On the east side there. You're on the
Yeah,
east
we're
side.
between Isabella and Nettie's Way. And it's just a little section where people seem to like to park, cram their vehicles in there, and that's fine, like, right? They're allowed to, but it does block our view, and if the traffic is gonna increase, and now if these garbage trucks come through, it's like, okay, what's Broadway gonna look like? Because there are often times where there's like these intense little spots at certain times where it can get really hairy with traffic, and I know it was mentioned that there's something going up at Confed and
It's gonna be a traffic light at Confed and Oil Heritage.
that doesn't help us on our end as far as I'm concerned.
And as far as the garbage trucks go, we hope that doesn't happen.
Right. I'm just thinking worst case scenario.
Yeah.
But it is a big concern for us. Like in the winter, it's fine because they don't park. Right? But depending on time of year, it can be hard to make that even a right-hand turn, let alone a left-hand turn, so. You know, I understand for other people, it might be drainage issues that they're concerned about, but for some of us, the way our driveways are set up, it's something's gonna have to be done to let us have more of a view of the road and see the traffic that's coming.
No, it's valid concern. Richardson, anything on that?
Well, it is a county road and we have forwarded the concerns with regard to the existing situation to the county to respond to. I mean, I'm not a traffic engineer. I don't pretend to be, but it sounds like parking on the street is the biggest issue.
Yeah, we need our view unobstructed.
So,
Talk to the county again.
yes, talk to the county again and relay what your concerns are in that. It's in fact the parking on the street that's restricting your view
Right.
at this particular time. With regard to people going too fast, I agree. I mean, all you can do is police it.
Yeah.
Speed does drop down in that area too, but they sometimes forget to do that.
Well, they go fast there.
Because that's what.
Mr. Silva?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I did speak to Craig at the county. He has reviewed this situation and he did confirm that they don't have any setback requirements for driveways for parking as they do for intersections, for example. And the risk that we kind of run into here is if we establish some setbacks, which I understand you have some very valid concerns about being able to see, is that there's so many driveways in that area that if everybody requests it, we might as well just eliminate the parking in general. And I don't know if that's something that people are looking to achieve. I know that some people enjoy on-street parking, some people don't enjoy on-street parking, and I can tell you from experience as well, that on-street parking actually slows down vehicles. It adds a bit of a visual buffer. People do slow down as soon as there's some on-street parking established. So we can continue to talk to the county about that. That road is going to continue to increase in terms of traffic. It is an old Kings Highway. The intent, the function of the road is to move large volumes of traffic. That's just the reality of the situation. But certainly we can continue to engage in the county and see if there's any mitigating measures that could be put in place.
I think, Mr. De Silva, that would probably be a good idea because I think we have to recognize the concerns there. And as we all know, that nobody slows down until they hit Nettie's Way and
Well, and traffic in Wyoming is not diluted onto any other major road. It's always just Broadway, right? Whereas other towns are set up, it might be more diluted. Not this.
we don't have that truckers route, do we? So if I can leave that with Mr. De Silva, follow up on, we'll express our voice our concerns to the county as well. Report to it. Rodriguez, you're next, and then I'm gonna go to the resident.
Thank you. So I just wanted to be clear on what your concern was. So is it on a straightaway or near an intersection? Where you're. And are there setbacks at the intersections where you can't park?
It's between Nettie's Way and Isabella. And it's just a little section where there's just enough parking, like it's kind of a unique little spot where everybody seems to like to cram their vehicles when there's like a pool party or something, like it's like that perfect little spot to park. And then it fills right up. And like I said, like it can, vehicles right up against our driveway on both sides, makes turn very scary when there's traffic coming.
Thank you.
Clay?
Mary McLeod from 501 Isabella Street. And I understood you said that the sewers are all going to be tied in onto Broadway Street.
Yes, the sanitary sewers, yes.
Okay, so they won't be digging up our end of Isabella Street?
There will be services installed here in front of these lots here. Okay, but that doesn't require Isabella to be dug up, just in front of these properties to install the sanitary and water connections. Okay, we're not extending past here.
It doesn't go all the way back there now.
Well, Isabella comes. across-
Isabella does, but the
Yeah.
sewer doesn't go all the way
Well,
back there.
Well, okay, I'll go to Paul.
Or the water.
I'm just gonna have.
I would have to.
Well, I know I live there. It doesn't go past my place.
That's fine.
You on sewer and what?
I thought water. The only reason because they cut all our springs off and drained our well when they did the other subdivision. But we do not have sewers and it doesn't go past our property. And we. Right.
Maybe you will now.
Yeah. I don't have access to the detailed engineering plans right now, but I know all of the lots within the subdivision will be serviced by water and sewer.
But off of
Would you like to
Isabella
answer
Street,
that?
not Broadway.
I'll stand to be corrected. Jake is on Zoom. The way I understand it, these lots on Isabella Street will be drained this way and gravity to Broadway. It will not be going down Isabella at all. How that connection is I don't know that.
Because that's sewer isn't deep enough.
Right.
Does that answer your question?
Well, I guess, so the street's going to be kept open.
Mary, if you give me your number, I can give you a call back and tell you how that road will be dealt with there, how the surfacing will be installed, okay?
519-841-3618.
3618. Okay, we'll have a look at it and we'll get back to you, okay?
Yes, sir.
Charlie Phipps, just to add them again, can you just confirm that the understanding is there'll be no water run from the current field north onto Isabella properties?
So yeah, the municipality, town of Plympton-Wyoming requires all developments to maintain the water upon itself. So any water generated inside the development, including rear yards, front yards, etc., has to stay within that development. So as Mr. DeSilva described, it will be all channeled into the road storm sewers and then south into the stormwater management. So the only exception to that rule is we will be working with the engineers. If there's areas where there's grading conflicts, you may see a common soil which drain both properties. But that's not typically common. We do like to keep the developers draining their own water. It depends on the design and the land around it.
Ms. Richardson?
I found the sanitary servicing. And the servicing basically starts right here and flows this way and down this way. So we won't be going into it, well, we will in front of here, but it's not extending it from where it ends there to here. It's coming internal from the subdivision, okay?
Water tie-in?
Well, let me see what it says about. Water, yes, water will be connected. Yes,
Where's the connection on Isabella?
yes, there's a connection on Isabella.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
It ends right at Greg's. Right.
So it will connect into the existing water main.
Mary, does that confirm your questions? Any further questions? Okay, I have a motion by Councillor Bojan, seconded by Councillor Rodriguez, that the report by Patty Richardson, Senior Planner, and Randy Burke, Planner, dated March 18th, 2024, regarding the draft subdivision 38T-23-001 be received. So all those in favor? Carried. Have a motion by Councillor Wolvette, seconded by Councillor Van Claveren. The council recommended the County of Lambton Subdivision Approval Authority that the draft plan of subdivision be draft approved, subject to the conditions included in report SR 24-059, dated March the 18th, 2024. Council, any questions on that motion? The vote, all those in favor? Carried. A motion by Councillor Vaizey, seconded by Councillor Bojan, that the public meeting be adjourned. All those in favor? Carried. This public meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for coming this evening and sharing your viewpoints.
I would like to remind everyone that if you haven't signed the sign-in sheet, please do. So before the
Council will Okay, council, welcome back. We're back open. Let me know, Lisa, when we're good to go. Okay. Okay, council, welcome back. Those that are running with us virtually, unfortunately, we have to go into in camera. I have a motion by Councillor Bojan, second by Councillor Basie. The council move into an in-camera meeting of council pursuant to section 239 of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended for the following reasons. Item A, proposed land acquisition matter, section 239 bracket 2 bracket C, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board. Item B, personal matters, section 239 bracket 2 bracket B, personal matters about by identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. And item C, litigation matters, section 239 bracket 2 bracket E, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board. Council will call for the vote. All those in favor?